AEW Dynamite and NXT Halloween Havoc were two very good shows, but which one was better? We'll find out in the War Room next on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. We start off AEW Dynamite with one half of the semifinals. Adam Hangman Page is able to last against Wardlow to advance to the finals. And on NXT, we have a new North American champion as Johnny Gargano beats Damian Priest in a Devil's Playground match. If there was a word to describe both these matches, I think the word should be physical. I think they were both very good physical matches. On AEW Dynamite, I think this was a very good showcase for Wardlow. He was a little tentative at first, but as the match progressed, I think he looked very, very good. He looked very dominant, and it helped set up the comeback spot for Adam Hangman Page after the senton. And I think they did a very good job protecting Wardlow by having Page win with not one, but two buckshot lariats. Over on NXT, I thought Damian Priest versus Johnny Gargano was a very, very good match. The only thing that really bothered me was the fact that this went through not one, but two picture-in-picture commercial breaks. I wish that they could have done where they could have made this a commercial-free block brought to you by Geico, which, by the way, did you know it was Geico-ween? Happy Geico-ween. They must have said that about 500 times during this episode of NXT Halloween Havoc. But the match nonetheless was very good. Interesting to see this ghost face that helps Johnny Gargano win the match. Wonder who it is. I know there's a few theories out there that it could be Austin Theory that helped Johnny Gargano win this match. So we'll see how it goes. Let me know in the comments what you guys thought of who Ghostface is that helped Johnny Gargano win the North American Championship for the second time. Next up on AEW Dynamite, we have Eddie Kingston versus Matt Sydal. And over on NXT, Pat McAfee talks to the world about why he's doing what he's doing and aligning with Oni Lorcan and Danny Burch. And not only that, we also get the return of Pete Dunne, which was a little bit of a surprise if you ask me. You have the travel restrictions going on with the pandemic. He was in the UK. He was in NXT UK just a couple weeks ago, having a match with Ilya Dragunov where they beat Walter and Alexander Wolf. And here he is on NXT a couple weeks later. So makes you wonder, does this also mean that other British wrestlers that we haven't seen in a while could be coming back to the States for NXT or AEW? More specifically, guys like Jordan Devlin and Pac. So we'll see as the weeks come where their returns come to NXT and AEW respectively. I thought this was a very good segment for NXT. I think Pat McAfee is one of, if not the best promos in NXT right now. I wish that Pat McAfee would teach some of these guys how to cut a promo, even some guys on the main roster that could really use the promo work. But, I mean, this was an overall good segment. Pete Dunne comes back, turns on Kyle O'Reilly, which is kind of a throwback to when Roderick Strong turned on Pete Dunne, what was that, 2-3 years ago? So that could be the reason why Pete Dunne attacked Kyle O'Reilly and is attacking the Undisputed Era and joining forces with Pat McAfee. So not necessarily a heel turn per se, but if Undisputed Era are being baby faces in this story, I guess Pete Dunne is a heel in that regard. As for Eddie Kingston and Matt Sydal, I love how Eddie Kingston was using storyline progression and backstory to this match with Matt Sydal, how Matt Sydal tried to steal his thunder in the Casino Battle Royale. He throws it off to Lance Archer, who eliminated him last in the Casino Battle Royale, even though Kingston says that he never was eliminated. The match itself was kind of an extended squash, but I did like how at the end, Kingston was calling Matt Sydal Moxley and trying to force Moxley to quit. Little nice storyline there. I think this is a very good story that we're seeing between Jon Moxley and Eddie Kingston. And I think the match at Full Gear next Saturday is going to be a good one. And I'm very excited for that one. Next up, I think, are the letdowns for both AEW Dynamite and NXT. On AEW Dynamite, we have the interview segment with the Young Bucks and FTR. And on NXT, we have Santos Escobar versus Jake Atlas in a non-title match. The Escobar Atlas match, there really wasn't much time here to give them for a full-fledged match that I think they should deserve and get some, notoriety, especially with Jake Atlas forming with Isaiah Swerve Scott. You would have thought maybe give him a little bit more time, but Escobar pretty much dominated most of this match. Atlas tried to get a comeback, but then Legado del Fantasma on the outside interfere. He gets headbutted from a weighted mask, and Escobar takes advantage for the win. Young Bucks versus FTR. We learned that the announcement that everyone was excited for was just that if the Young Bucks lose, they can no longer chase the AEW Tag Team Championships. I wouldn't have minded this, except we literally had this same storyline at last year's Full Gear involving another EVP, which is Cody going for the AEW Championship. That story was much better. I think Cody had much passion in that promo. That was the infamous undesirable to undeniable promo where he expressed that he can't go for the championship if he loses to Jericho. This here was just, FTR were barely in the segment. This was just more of the progression of the Young Bucks. And honestly, I was not a fan of this. I think, like I said, probably the letdown of AEW Dynamite this week. And for Santos Escobar and Jake Atlas, that was the letdown for NXT. But we move on to, I think, which were the entertainment portions of AEW Dynamite and NXT this week. On AEW Dynamite, we have the Inner Circle Town Hall to decide whether or not MJF will join the Inner Circle. And on NXT, it was the Haunted House of Terrors match between Cameron Grimes and Dexter Lumis. Now, this did go through two separate segments. There was a part 1 and a part 2, but I will discuss both parts for the Haunted House of Terrors match because I think ideally it's basically the same thing regardless of what part it was. I think Cameron Grimes was perfect for this. He played the role perfectly of this very cocky guy, but now that he's put in this uncomfortable situation, he is a little hesitant. He is a little scared. And Dexter Lumis being that cold stare, quiet, kind of like a Michael Myers or a Jason type killer. This was well done. The only thing that I have an issue with, one, they had Michael PSA show up and he was great, except for you couldn't hear what he was saying. I think he was just reciting the lyrics to Bad Street, but maybe someone else could figure out what he was saying and let me know in the comments below. And I think the production was a little bit overproduced. Yes, they're trying to make it look like a low budget horror film, but I think even in low budget horror films, there's not as many freaking cuts. Like it felt like Kevin Dunn had his hand in the production of this Haunted House of Terrors match. Nonetheless, I love the zombies. I loved Cameron Grimes. I love Dexter Lumis in this. I thought this was a very entertaining match. Well, I shouldn't really call it a match, but a very entertaining cinematic match that we haven't really seen in the last couple of months as they brought back the Thunderdome and the Capitol Wrestling Center. It was a nice little change of pace and it fit with Halloween Havoc. Now, the Town Hall on AEW Dynamite, I thought was just as entertaining. I think the fact that they're spoofing the political debates and all this stuff, I have no problem with it. I think it was funny. I think the fact that they used Luchasaurus, Britt Baker, and Eric Bischoff, 3 well-educated people, to ask the questions was good. I think MJF was really good in his responses. I think Ortiz at the end was very good and saying that he'll never join the or MJF will never join the Inner Circle. But then we got kind of a twist where Chris Jericho says that MJF has to win his way into the Inner Circle. I wasn't expecting that. I thought they would have accepted MJF in, and then that would lead to the match. But instead, they're kind of doing it backwards where they're leading to the match. MJF, I guess, would win, and then he eventually leads to the break of the Inner Circle, which I actually don't mind that. It's a little different than what we usually see in wrestling storylines. So we'll let this one play out, but I did like the Town Hall nonetheless. Up next, we have a championship match on AEW Dynamite. It's the Lumberjack match for the TNT Championship, Cody Rhodes versus Orange Cassidy. And on NXT, it was Rhea Ripley versus Raquel Gonzalez. I really like the Raquel Gonzalez-Rhea Ripley match. I think, again, another physical match. For the first real showcase match for Raquel Gonzalez as a singles wrestler, I think she knocked it out of the park, especially when she's going toe-to-toe with arguably the best women's wrestler on the NXT roster in Rhea Ripley. She went toe-to-toe with her, moved to move with her, kept on pace with her. I didn't really see any botches. I think Raquel Gonzalez looked very, very good in this match. And if they ever were to have a rematch, I would have no problem watching it. This match should have been on a takeover, honestly. I don't know. I mean, I know they're trying to do stuff to help with ratings, but this was a takeover match. This should have been on TakeOver 31, in my opinion. But nonetheless, good match, and we got it for free. So over on AEW Dynamite, though, this TNT Championship match, if there's one word to describe it, the word for me would be annoying. Honestly, it was annoying because you have these lumberjacks and they're doing really nothing for the most part, except for occasional spots. You have that hug spot with the best friends where the lumberjacks are just letting them do the hug instead of attacking Orange Cassidy and throwing them back into the ring. You have the superplex where everybody's boxing each other out like they're trying to get a rebound in a basketball game. The finish was, not my cup of tea with John Silver interfering and then Arn Anderson punching Orange Cassidy. Kind of is counterproductive where you have a face hitting another face to get the win where the heels are distracted. Like it seemed out of place. All this just to set up a buy-in match between Orange Cassidy and John Silver and a 6-man tag where Cody is going to be with the Gun Club against 3 members of the Dark Order next week. It just was not good. I honestly, I think this match was actually worse than the first TNT Championship match between Cody and Orange Cassidy because there was just no focus to the actual match itself. You're just too worried about what the Lumberjacks were doing, and they weren't really doing much in the process. But we have another championship match that redeemed itself for AEW Dynamite, and that is Serena Deeb versus Leyla Hirsch for the NWA Women's Championship. In case you missed it, Thunder Rosa dropped the NWA Women's Championship to Serena Deeb earlier this week, and I mean, a lot of people are speculating where Thunder Rosa is heading next. Is she going to WWE? Is she going to AEW? Is she staying with NWA? And she's doing a really good job trolling the social media and the dirt sheets on where her next step is. But wherever it is, Thunder Rosa deserves the best. If that's AEW, if that's WWE, if that is staying with NWA, she is going to be well booked and treated well in whatever company she ends up with. But the match with Serena Deeb and Leyla Hirsch was very, very good. So much better than the TNT Championship match. The only thing I have a problem with was most of this match happened in the picture-in-picture. We all say it. They got to put more focus in this women's division, but they got to build it up a little bit. But, let me know in the comments if you agree with me on this, but don't you feel like the NWA Women's Championship has been booked a little bit better than the AEW Women's Championship at this point? We have an AEW Women's Championship match at Full Gear where Hikaru Shida will be having a rematch with Nyla Rose, and there really has been no story to it. It's just, Nyla Rose is the number 1 contender, and then Shida is facing her because Rose refuses to wrestle until she gets that rematch. It was just, it feels like we want the rankings, but this is not how we want the rankings to work, where it's just kind of thrown together. Like, we need a story. Here it is. She's number 1. Go ahead. I think they need to do a little bit better job with the ranking system, and that's not the way to do it. But over on NXT, Tomasso Ciampa cuts a backstage promo, calling out the NXT roster, calling them entitled, and one person specifically is Velveteen Dream, where he feels like he can't get out of his own way to succeed. We all know that Velveteen Dream is a rising star, a lot of promise, but whether it's on TV or not on TV, he can't get out of his own way. So Tomasso Ciampa calls him out, and we get a match next week for NXT where Tomasso Ciampa will face the Velveteen Dream. And I think it was a very good promo. It was a very good promo. And, Tomasso Ciampa is one of the best promos that NXT has. He's one of the best characters that they had. And I know since he's come back, he hasn't really done much, but maybe this is the start of another push for Tomasso Ciampa in NXT. But let's head to the main event. 2 really good main events, if not great main events. The second half of the semifinals for the number 1 contendership for the AEW Championship, Kenny Omega versus Penta El Zero M, Pentagon Jr., Penta El Zero Miedo, whatever you want to call him. And on NXT, it was the Women's Championship in a table, ladders, and scares match. Io Shirai does retain against Candice LeRae. I'll start with AEW Dynamite. For the last year or so, there's a lot of fans out there that are wondering, where is this best bout machine we heard so much about? Where this Kenny Omega guy? He just seems like he's a guy that just points around and makes these stupid faces, and I just don't get his character. Like, where's this great Kenny Omega we heard so much about. They haven't booked him as strong. They put him in the tag team division. Like, why? Why? This is why, folks. This match right here, I think, is the return of the Best Bout Machine. This was his coming out match. Him and Pentagon Jr. Now, for those that remember their match at 2018 at All In was a great match. Some might even say the match of the night. This match was very good in its own right. We saw Kenny Omega with the V-triggers, the very stiff V-triggers. He had some ring psychology. He was selling the arm that towards the end where Pentagon pulled the arm back. The one winged angel he tried to do and he missed it. The V, like I said, Omega looked very good. It was the old Kenny Omega that we saw in New Japan Pro Wrestling, I think. And this is where I feel like if you saw the title of this video, I say Kenny Omega is back. This is what I'm talking about. The Best Bout Machine is back. And I think the match that we're going to get next Saturday between Hangman Page and Kenny Omega is going to be a great one. Maybe even the best match of the night. And I think that is where you see the real Best Bout Machine in a big stage that many fans have been waiting for. We're finally going to see it. Now over on NXT, Io Shirai and Candice LeRae. I mean, they're two of the best women's wrestlers that NXT has. So without a doubt, you knew this match was going to be good. This was a physical match. They threw ladders at each other. They're going through tables. They have fake body parts for the scare thing. I thought that was very good. We had the ghost face thing try to help Candice LeRae at the end. Don't know if it's the same ghost face that helped Gargano. I know some people are assuming it could be Indy Hartwell as she helped Candice LeRae in weeks past. So I think that will be to be determined. Hopefully they tell this story a little bit more. I love this match. Really love this match. Now, Candice LeRae did take a couple of really stiff bumps. One where she took a suplex to the chair, and another one that was the finish where she got pushed off of one ladder through another ladder. Hopefully Candice LeRae is okay, but Io Shirai does retain, and you just wonder what's next for Io Shirai. You would think Rhea Ripley gets put back into the conversation. I know they're trying to push Ember Moon since she's returned. What is Tony Storm put into all this? So the women's division, as we have said in months, is in very good shape for NXT. Hopefully AEW could turn their tide and get that back in so that they can go hand in hand and have better women's matches on AEW Dynamite. But before we decide which show is better this week, let's go over the ratings. This week, we see that the ratings are up for both shows this week. AEW Dynamite goes from a 0.30 to a 0.32 this week in the 18 to 49 demographic, but NXT gets back into the top 50, and not only that, nearly makes the top 20, going from a 0.16 to a 0.25 this week. Now, they also get a 0.44 in the 50 plus, beating AEW Dynamite, who got a 0.26, a drop from last week. And total viewership, both are up, but a huge, huge boost for NXT, going from 644,000 total viewers last week to 876,000 total viewers this week, beating AEW Dynamite, who only gained 30,000 total viewers last week, as they total 781,000 total viewers. All right, this one was hard to tell. Both shows were very, very good. I think the main events were both the matches of the night. I think both segments that were the lackluster were in the same time frame of their specific shows. And I think they had entertaining segments like the Town Hall and the Haunted House of Terrors. If I wish I could just say it's a tie, but you guys want me to choose. Honestly, I think NXT Halloween Havoc was slightly the better show this week. And I think that is just simply because the matches that they promoted, they all delivered. Damian Priest and Johnny Gargano delivered. Rhea and Raquel delivered. Io and Candice delivered. Whereas on Dynamite, that Bucks announcement fell flat. And the TNT Championship, not so great. But everything else on the show is very good. So let me know in the comments what you guys thought was the better show, AEW Dynamite or NXT Halloween Havoc. Don't forget to share us all over social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at SCPB Podcast. And to join the conversation, subscribe and hit that bell for notifications. My name is Michael Valenti, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Squared Circle Psychobabble.